Welcome. Are we rolling? Welcome to class 4 of the Ernest Holmes papers at Center for Spiritual Living, Asheville. What is today? This is the end of November 2016, just to orient it in time and space. And we begin in treatment, so take a deep breath. Let it out. But as you let it out, let go of anything that you may have brought in with you. Take another deep breath and let it out. And as you let it out, let go of any concerns or cares you might have and continue to breathe deeply as we know. We know that there's only one thing going on in the universe. It is spirit. It is the divine. It is the absolute self-existent presence of all that is. We know that whatever it is, a word cannot contain it. And so we just go with the it with a capital I. We know that everything being created out of that one thing, that oneness, has to be what it is. We know that we are created out of that because it is all that there is. And so we allow ourselves to get a sense that we are the infinite. We are spirit boundless. We are one with all that is because we are all that is. We open up to this idea that we are a being of light and we are a being of love. It is our true nature. And that we are in alignment with that divine pattern that is us in physical form. And knowing that the presence of the divine is all that there is and it is what we are, we know that all is well. Life is unfolding beautifully and perfectly and wonderfully. And with great gratitude for such a wonderful class filled with such great people, we simply move into Thanksgiving and let this treatment go as together we say, and so it is. So is there anyone here other than the Burnsides that has not been here before? Anybody here for the first time? Great. One of the things that I love about this I'm just going to give you a little background, Curtis and Susan, is that this is the end of Ernest's process. A lot of classes that we teach on Monday night are the beginning of it. It's the original textbook, it's Creative Mind, which was his very first book, Creative Mind and Success, Basic Ideas of Science of Mind, those kinds of thoughts where he was still grappling with how do we create a better life? What do we do? How do we use this law of mind to create a better life for ourselves? And in the later years of his life, he's looking more at levels of consciousness, more expanded levels, bigger ideas. Instead of we're going to manifest a thing in our life, he says that we see the universe through the lens that we put up in front of the universe. He says that we place a pattern of our thought in front of the universe that we believe is there, and then what we see is the universe that we believe is there. So what he's trying to get us to do is to open to a bigger idea that not only are we connected, like a spider web is connected to all of the points, but that it is actually our consciousness projected out in form that returns to us as the event that we look at and experience. He says, the mountain will be to me what I am first to the mountain. So it's getting more esoteric, which just means hidden, a little bit more subtle. It's getting more expansive to me and asking us to kind of let go of our rigid 1 + 1 = 2 formula and open up and intuit to a greater idea. Does that make sense? What along those lines have you learned in the last 3 weeks?
Say that question.
Throw something out into the room that you learned along those lines. When I asked you that on the second week of class, nobody had learned anything. So Morgan.
Individual, okay, so we're not individuals, we're individualizations,
No, we're individualized.
individualized.
Individualization or an individual is a noun.
And that would be like an endpoint that wouldn't be be able to be creative. But when you're individualized, you can still allow the creative process to flow through you and keep going.
The noun has separation. Here's a noun, here's a noun. As to its very definition, it's a thing, and it's separated in time and space. An individualization is a movement of energy, it's a flow. It's more a verb. And I use the example that I really like. It's not a river, it's rivering. There's a difference there. And so we are the movement of spirit instead of an endpoint of spirit. Does that make sense? Good. What else did you learn, Rick?
I love this chapter 7 where we both did. And
Which one is chapter 7?
that's where the transcendence does not reconcile.
Right, right. That's all the big ideas.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I love the way he goes through his own process in thinking about this. He said he just read that statement and spent at least a half an hour just mulling it over, thinking about it. And I love where he, because, and this is true for all of us, he said automatically, when you think on something like that, and this is true, if as your intellect analyzes it, there's an element in us that synthesizes it.
Kind of hard to hear over here.
Oh.
Yeah. Let me get you the mic. I'll hold it. You talk.
Okay. The process of, that he went through, and he said, as you think on an idea like that, a big idea, automatically your unconsciousness coordinates, synthesizes as the intellect analyzes. Something inside of you synthesizes and you never forget it. And this is the way he was going over with how important it is to read. And but I just love this chapter. We went through it twice. We'll probably go through it again. But that whole process that he describes, and then when he comes to conclusions about it, he states it in philosophical terms and what it would mean in spiritual terms, what it would mean in treatment, and he really breaks it down, and you see that's true. That's how it works.
The transcendence. So the quote was Ernest quoting Aurobindo saying, transcendence transcends. It does not rectify or reconcile. And I've misquoted it for a long time. Transcendence transmutes. It does not rectify. And reconcile. It does not reconcile. Transcendence transmutes. It does not reconcile. And what we're doing here is we're looking at levels. We're looking at the evolution of consciousness in science of mind. And that's why I told everybody this was an advanced class. And just kind of hold on, and if you have questions, ask them. But so often when we come into this teaching, we're looking to fix problems, we're looking to find the answer, we're looking to work things out, we're looking to create a healing or money or something like that. And he's saying that as you rise in consciousness, you're transcending the world of effects, the world of problems. Because a problem has to be at the level of an effect. So you're transcending that, and when you transcend that, something happens. It's like that Bette Midler song I was talking about last week, From a Distance. the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. I did know those. But as you pull back from being immersed in whatever the issue is in the world of effects, you begin to see a greater whole, and a wholeness to it, and an interconnectedness to all of that isn't at the level of the problem. So, and he brings it into treatment. He says, when you rise in consciousness, the very nature of the problem that you thought you had shifts. And you're not reconciling it. You're not doing a bank statement. You're not trying to get the right answer. You're not trying to work it out. You're rising up in consciousness. And this is so important to me because it speaks to my pet peeve, which is dealing at the level of secondary causation or first cause, primary causation. If you're dealing at the level of effect, the quote from Troward is, when you allow your purpose to be contingent upon any person, place, or thing, you have descended to the level of secondary causation. And that is the realm of doubt, fear, and limitation. So if you're doubting, I hope this works. If you're afraid, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Or if you're in any kind of limitation, there's not enough of whatever, you're down at secondary causation. And always I'm trying to get us to rise up in consciousness and just go straight to God. Just go to those absolute truths that never change. And what you'll find is that if you focus on love, the money issues will resolve themselves. It's the most wonderful thing. If you focus on your connectedness to all that is, that you're a point through which spirit pours itself into life, then the body heals. And so often people are, well, give me an affirmation for this specific problem. And I want to say, look at the consciousness that created that problem, and let's heal the whole consciousness and watch not only that problem shift, but any other problem that may be going on in your life. Jane, do you have a question?
Well, no, I have a comment, but it's pretty much what you were saying, because what I was going to say is more and more I'm getting the feeling that there's something, I'm part of something huge.
Isn't that wonderful?
That's me, but
Yes.
it's also, and also therefore, the present day moment, which I'm always trying to pinpoint, is just sort of small.
Right.
Yeah, because
Right.
there's something really huge and I'm trying to.
So for those of you who didn't hear, Jane's getting a sense that there is something really huge that she's a part of or connected with.
Yeah,
And that what's going on in this particular moment just isn't that big of a deal.
yeah,
And when you let, it is small. It's like the thing, whatever you're worried about today or whatever you've been worried about in the last month, how important is that going to be in 10,000 years? It's not going to be anything. So if you can get a little perspective, instead of jumping in all of the issues of life and trying to fix them, and we're going into money as a spiritual idea, and this is very pertinent to all of that, instead of trying to fix the problem by using the power of mind, what we want to do is rise up in consciousness and have that intimate connection of spirit as us, the trust and the faith to know that all is well, to be able to see that in every area of our life, and then watch how that consciousness manifests a whole brand new life. And so if there's an illness in the body, if there's a financial issue, if there are something going on in a relationship, those are byproducts of a limited consciousness. And what we want to do is open that consciousness to as much of the fullness of who we are as can possibly be, and then let that demonstrate. And it may demonstrate in a way that we didn't even plan. We may have thought we were moving to Charlotte and we ended up in Asheville, North Carolina, and we're going, well, holy smokes, how did we end up here? But there will be a greater good in that because there's a greater consciousness. So that's what we're working on, is expanding from, okay, this is your problem. What's your problem? Write it down. Let's come up with an affirmation. Pound it in. You know, don't let yourself think about anything else. And that is effective at the level that it's effective, and is quite valuable for people at a certain place. But what we want to do is we want to transcend those levels of effect. And that the things that we manifested, keeping in mind that the manifested universe is old news based on a consciousness that we had a second ago. So that can completely transform from a different state. Jen?
Well, it reminds me of one of the things I loved in this reading, because you're always saying this quote, and I just love, he says, "I believe that every human is an incarnation of the one living spirit. This one living spirit is undivided and indivisible, and must therefore remain a total unit whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere." Every time I think of that, the center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere, that just blows me out of
And that was a quote from Meister Eckhart, who was a Catholic priest.
I just love that.
And look at how he vacillates. Last week he wrote, "You can't be all of God, that's ridiculous." And then this week he's saying that the absolute must be present at every point. At every point in all that it is. You cannot divide an infinite and have it still be an infinite. So it's, it's not a great thing it's a great thing not easy to wrap your head around. And I know that there are a lot of people here who would rather be a part of spirit. It's easier to be a part of spirit. It's easier to be a little bit of God. Hey God, look this way when you're not too busy. A couple of miracles would be great. Thanks. That's easier than to try to get the idea that somehow we are the doorway of all that God is, moving into our experience as us. That's huge. And I think that one of the things that we want to do in this class is just like kind of stop our brain a little bit. Like Rick was saying, the difference between an intellectual understanding of something and a deeper understanding is really big. So what we want to do is now what is that if I am the point through which spirit moves as me in its totality right now? I mean, I was working on a painting project all day. How does that go together? That's exactly what we want to do. That somehow we have a doorway, not even to the infinite, but through the infinite as us.
I think the connection is to our feeling. It's not that you painted something. It's how did you feel while you were painting it? How were you?
Frustrated.
But is that to be judged as good or bad compared to being joyful? I mean, yeah.
According to John's talk on, what was it called?
Yeah.
I can't even remember the word. Attachment.
Right. It's still detached from me.
Just too detached to it. So when we let go of our attachment to our personality, to our ego, to our likes and dislikes, we are more open to the greater truth that is. And this experience, it'll put money in your bank account, it'll heal your body, it'll have you have great relationships, you'll be experiencing joy and success up the wazoo. That's what I wanted to say. And it's because that's the nature of spirit. And the more that we can come into alignment with that nature of spirit, the more that shows up as our lives. We only have problems when we shut down. That is the only time we have problems. When we move into fear, when we move into what ifs, when we move into it's never happened before, when we limit that amazingness of us, then it demonstrates its problems. So the way to shift that is to rise above all of that. And that takes some tricks. I grant you that. When you're caught up in fear, just to say, oh well, it's fear. You have self-made, limited viewpoints on life, held that up to the universe, and now that's what you're getting, and you think it's real. It's not real. It's just the belief system that you held up in front of you. Maybe conscious, maybe not conscious. And just to say, well, I'm just going to let that go, takes a little bit of work. But the work is not in trying to force the law of mind into manifestation. It's to rise up and come into alignment with what Ernest called last week that divine pattern that is either of every organ, or I just think that I am in this physical form a divine pattern. That is what I am. And so what I need to do is come back into alignment with that, forget about all of the things that I've created that seem to be stumbling blocks, and just let it work out. And then Breezy comes over and says, I want to come over and sand and paint. And I went, oh, thank you, thank you. This is all about the 7-foot round teaching symbol that is going up on the wall this week. It's over in my basement right now. So what else have you learned in the last 3 weeks? Some of these are mind-blowing ideas. April.
The great are the great only because we're on our knees.
Right, you look up at someone and think that they are greater than you only because you have gotten down on your knees. Get up. Yeah, because either spirit is present in you the same way as it is in someone else, or it's not. And so no one is better than you, and conversely, no one is lesser than you. So you can't look down on anyone either. And the truth is that everyone is you. I mean, isn't even a reflection of you. Everyone is you. And that's where the brain starts to get, what? But I like to look at everyone who has achieved greatness, everyone who has achieved great good in the world, everyone who has achieved great prosperity in the world, everyone who has done anything that I would admire. I am already that. I don't have to turn into it. I am already that. That is already me. And so I can sit back and rest in a greater level of faith that all is well, instead of, okay, I gotta do my to-do list, and I gotta have all these things on my list, and I gotta achieve this, and model that, and get a coach, and make sure that I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing so that I can turn into the person that I wanna be. I already am that. And frankly, the demonstrations come much faster when we're higher in consciousness, and when we relax into it and just let it all show up. And it may show up completely different than the way that we thought it was, but if we are experiencing any kind of limitation at all, it's because we have limited that which we are. We're not limiting God. You cannot limit God. We are limiting our doorway into our world. So then it's a matter of relaxing, taking a breath, opening up, and allowing spirit to flow. And to be okay with it not being under control. You know, some of us are really super control freaks. And then we want it to show up the way we want it to show up because we've planned it out. Instead of knowing that there's already a divine pattern. It's not giving your power away. It's not some kind of fate or kismet or some plan that's outside of us. It's not like that. It's more surrendering to the greater part of us instead of trying to limit it out of our fear that this is the way I did it before, and so I know if I do it that way again, it'll happen. To say, no, there's a divine pattern that's unfolding here, and I don't have to, beat it into the ground with a hammer. I can just ride the wave and watch how it shows up. And to do that, it requires some detachment. It requires some emotional maturity. It requires some faith and trust. Has anybody ever done that? Watched that ride come out, and the swell of spirit and the manifestation, and it's way more than you ever thought it would be, and it shows up really different? Yeah. Drew.
But nonetheless amazing. There's been many stories in history where, soldiers are pinned down and the odds are against them, and there's hail of fire everywhere. And there's so many stories of these. World War I, World War II, I mean, just go on and on and on. And you can watch these people every once in a while, they call them heroes or whatnot, but they just literally get up from wherever they're at, go through, there's one specifically in World War II on the beaches of Normandy, the one guy just got up, walked through, like the bullets disappeared around him, and just went through and took a position and then another position and saved all. But they had this great calm come over them, and they're like, no, I'm just doing this. It just was just this, so in the midst of just.
Sure, because if you're afraid you're gonna get shot, the one and only bullet coming your way is going to hit you.
Or you're gonna make it through and trip on something, and you know. Yeah. You know. So I mean, but yeah, if you're afraid, well, that's what's gonna happen.
Right.
But every one of them, like bagpipers in World War II and even Boer Wars and all that, these guys didn't have any weapons. They had bagpipes, and they just stood up and went over the berm and played, and they're getting bullets, getting a bullet through their bag. Okay, close it up, and they're still playing. And everybody goes, all right, you know, it's just something that wells up, and they're just super calm.
Right.
They're just, they're like in that zone of and that's all I can equate it to, is being in divine grace, and they just go.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not only protected, but happy, and so just, and then everything turns out.
Right, right. Happy is a key part, because joy is the undeniable proof of the presence of spirit, whatever that quote is. Yes, Jane?
I had a good friend years ago, and he was Hungarian, a young guy. This is when I was, younger. But anyway, it was World War II, and he was in the army, and things were going wrong, and he got so angry, he got furious at being ordered around and stuff, and he got madder and madder. And so finally he just got so angry that he said his mind just totally blanked out. And that he suddenly was in this a whole other different world where he wasn't afraid of anything, and he just walked through a lot of action.
Mm-hmm. And he was
never got
fine.
hurt. Yeah,
Well, he
it
used
just-
anger to get to the Zen state. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
Good,
emotion.
good, thank you. What? David?
But I guess for me, it's about finding my way into the zone. So no matter what's happening. So it's not to say, okay, maybe I do need to see a coach, and maybe I do need to do all of these things, but quote unquote, who's doing it, and what experience am I having in the midst of that?
Right, how are you doing it?
If I'm in traffic, okay, I'm in traffic. I don't have a choice at this moment, perhaps. Am I gonna fume, or am I just going to be in the zone? There's an experience to have
Right,
of the largeness of who I am in any situation.
right.
And it's about my willingness to go there or not.
Right, and sometimes we choose not to,
Oh, yeah.
because we feel justifiably angry that that person didn't go when the light changed, or I'm just going on your traffic model,
Right.
or something like that, that someone did something that they didn't do something they said they would do, something like that. And so we allow our personality to give us permission to go in a direction that really we don't want to go in. And we'll wallow around in that as long as we do, and then we'll come back out. This is why I think spiritual practice is so important, to be able to take time every day and connect with that greater reality, whatever that is to you. Just to connect, not to do a CSO letter, not to do treatments, not to read your special spiritual books. All of that is great, but to be able to just connect. And who was it over here said that you feel something that is magnificent, that is huge? To be able to have that connection, for me, helps me come back, because it gives me a greater discrepancy between what I know to be true, the real truth of it all, and what I'm doing. And the tension brings up, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're all, mad and stomping your foot and all of that, and that's just so ridiculous Don't do that. Just go back to the mountain will be to you what you are to the mountain. So what do I bring to my day? And then my day becomes that to me. So this idea of being able to have tools and techniques to bring us back, that's great. For me, that process had a lot of pressure and a lot of not good enough. I have to get better because I'm not good enough so that I can be spiritual. It didn't work. So this idea of relaxing into it, first of all, having a sense that there is a greater reality and then relaxing into that, for me, is a great transcendent type experience. And that transmutes, it doesn't reconcile. So we don't have to worry about the details of the issues. We allow the very nature of them to shift. And then our lives are very different. Question?
Real, yeah, it's, I think that it has to do with the conscious mind. With myself, if I try to control something, I'm using my, I'm consciously trying to control. So I have to just drop, the desire to control and, and let something.
And trust.
And trust.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You are making progress. Well, we all, Jane is our barometer.
Yeah.
We all are making progress. So we're talking tonight about money as a, did anybody else want to share anything before we go into the reading for tonight?
The what for tonight?
The reading for tonight. Susan,
I'm behind in the reading, but I like when
you're in your perfect and right
I'm in the
place.
perfect right place. Why does everybody say you can't do it? Why does everyone say there will always be war, there will always be poverty? Only because there has been. There is no logic in it. The logic of experience is no criterion of judgment of what could now or ought to be in the future.
Right, right. If it was, we would have no evolution. If we only had what had happened before, there would be no growth of any kind. We're constantly in a state of growth. Just as a biological species, we're constantly changing and evolving.
I'm looking at how I was in reading this, my own history is who I used to be. My rights could never have been here.
Right.
So I changed that history, and history changed.
And history doesn't determine our experience. Your history doesn't determine your
No.
experience. If you have a really big, emotionally charged story that is always hooking you and dragging you down, it's a good idea to change that. Give yourself a different story. Rewrite your past. But your history, no matter what it is, does not control your now moment.
No.
So to be able to separate from what's happened in the past is very empowering, because so many people think that, well, this happened, so the only thing that can happen is this. And that's the only reason that the second thing is happening is because we believe that it's the only thing that can happen because that happened in the last moment or a second ago or whatever. When you leave here and it's raining, check yourself out as to how wet you get. There are people who can walk through the raindrops. There are people who will attract the deluge. Just check yourself out. Use it as just an easy kind of an exercise of how am I connected with my environment? How do I move through my world? Am I going through the world going, at which time it's, or are you going through peaceful with your heart open, having fun? Just check yourself out. Bring up that energy and see how it affects your movement through the rain. We used to play with that a lot in Miami because it rained at 3 o'clock every afternoon, like clockwork. And you could play with the rain. Who had their hand up? Drew.
It's kind of an observation, I think. I know for me, I was told to tell a different story. I don't know who told me that. Somebody. Tell a different story. Those are facts that happen, blah, 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 and we've been through all of that. But it's like, it seems to me that it's like we're wanting to stay away from the negatives and all this other stuff. And it's like, what do you shy away? You just like become this, you're back in a hole again. Or you're.
Say I.
Or I'm back in a hole
Thank
again.
you.
Or I'm telling a lie. I'm creating these things out of nowhere. And recently, I was listening to Hicks, of course, and it's like, no, you're basically what you're talking about. You're transmuting, you're transcending it and transmuting them to where they don't have power over you, to where you don't want to tell that story because that's not true anymore. But yeah, it was a fact, it happened, this, blah, 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 you know, and then there were whatever things, but you know, it's not true now. It doesn't define you, it doesn't control you.
Me. Say
Me,
Uh-huh.
me, I. And it's just, it just goes with that. You're not lying, because with all this teaching, I mean, sometimes I just go, I just get so frustrated, and it's all a lie, it's all a hoax, we're just fooling ourselves. And then 10 minutes later, it's like, no, absolutely rip with it, feel it in my gut, that's all there is. You know, and then right back in it, you know, that wavy path. So, it was that observation of, no, we're not lying, we're not saying this, we're transcending it and giving it distance to where it doesn't have any control over it.
Right. So, remember we talked about seeing the world, dualistic language, and forgive me, seeing the world through your God eyes. See the world as if God were seeing the world. If you look back on your past, seeing it with God eyes, then it looks very different. Someone could, instead of feeling like this thing happened that I was really mad about, you could see that you were divinely protected from something else happening. You could see that people came into your life to help you get an important lesson, and instead of them being this awful, abusive person, they were an angel in disguise who was willing to put themselves in that dense negative energy so that you could have that breakthrough in this life. If you look at your past through God eyes, for lack of anything better to call it, then you can shift not only the circumstances, but you can shift the energy around it to put the blessing in, get the blessing out, to see that everything is interconnected in divine and perfect order, unfolding for the highest and best of all of humanity and beyond, that there is a balance and a harmony, and it's all love and it's all light, no matter what it looks like. And if we can see that, then we are rising up in consciousness, opening up to a different reality, and that the demonstration of my life through that is going to be a better life than the demonstration of my life through, oh, it was terrible and I'm still mad and you know, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Great. Sue and then Michael.
So, it's not a matter of whether the experience was negative or positive, it's my perception of it. And I think of all the time that I've wasted, knowing what I know now, all the time that I've wasted being afraid of something that didn't happen yet, that maybe happened once to somebody else, and one of it happens to me, all that imagination, you know, because when something actually happened, I never dealt with it the way I thought I would have, with the kind of fear that I thought would come up. It was never that way. It's just really quickly, this keeps coming to my mind. David, our cousin, was mugged the other day. So we called to see, you know, and I'm thinking, oh my God, poor Eileen, you know, these guys with a gun and everything, and they, you know, blah, blah, blah. Thinking of how scared I would have been. So David is telling me the story, and I said, oh, she must have been terrified. And he says, actually, no. The guy was wearing a mask, on the lower part of his face, and she said all she could think of was that he had really beautiful eyes. I mean, you don't know what's going to come up in the moment.
You don't.
We don't know how connected and how, sometimes how, I don't know how connected and how strong I really am until I'm faced with something. And then I act with what I know now.
Right. The Native Americans say to wear death on your shoulder.
Yeah.
To be ready to go at any second. And then you're not afraid of it. Michael, thank you, Michael.
Well, when I think like this, it's hard to be afraid of anything, or anything to really bother me, you know,
Right.
because it's like, one thing I learned in here, well, I kind of knew, but reiterated in these books, is like, Ernest quotes the Bible often, and just not that many years ago, that would have pissed me off so bad. But now I see the correlation of what it was really saying, that the religious people twisted up, right? Well, time, whatever, right? But when you look at it, it's like everything totally really is just one thing. Because all these religions say the same thing, right? It's like our bodies are 70% water, and so is the earth, right? 90% of our brains are like dormant, and the scientists say like 90% of the universe is missing. They call it the, right? They call it the dark matter. So, I mean, can you just imagine what's really going on? You know, I love the quote that mythology is more accurate than history, right? I mean, that excites me, man. I want to move stuff with my mind. I want to, you know, all the things that we can do. You know, all these superhero movies and stuff. I mean, that's more than Hollywood. We can do this stuff, right? We just tapped into it. So, what is the other 90% of my brain doing? Where is it?
I call this a breakthrough. But the ability to, even for a second, imagine that there is so much more going on, that in and of itself cracks you open. And what we want to do is we want to open up to this reality that is peace, power, beauty, joy, love, light, wisdom, balance, harmony, abundance, health, wholeness, all of that it just is. You don't have to go get it. You don't have to align yourself with it and attract it. You don't have to do any of that. It just already is. And when we can open up and catch that, then it shows up in our lives in greater and greater amounts. But it shows up with peace, power, beauty, joy, love, light, wisdom, happiness, prosperity, health, wholeness, all of that energy. It's not making it happen, or I'm going to create something now. Ernest says there's nothing to create. We don't create anything.
Well, that makes sense, because that other 90% of the universe that they say is missing, it can't be missing, it's got to be there. We're just not vibrating in spiritually enough place.
Right, so your millions and millions of dollars, you just want to vibrate at that level. Your perfect soulmate, you're doing your work in the world that has great passion and joy to it. It's already there. You just need to vibrate at that level, to use Michael's terms. When you vibrate at that level, what you notice is that it's here. It never was gone. It's here. And so our job is to transcend. And it challenges the ego, because you have that whole detachment is the word, I did find it, that whole detachment thing going on. You have the whole, I'm not my own unique self. I'm you, and you are me. Which challenges our whole individual perception of ourselves. It challenges that we want to know how things are going to be. So that's what we're going to create. Instead of everything already is, and we're going to allow it. It's interesting because Ernest uses the word allow a lot. What are we looking at? Is it raining? Oh. Well, Ernest uses the word allow a lot, and Esther Hicks uses the word allow a lot. So it's about letting go of the closing down, opening up, and letting it be okay. And part of that is that, you've got to be safe to open up, to have faith and trust. It brings up a whole safety issue. So where are you with that? Are you making up stories like Sue to keep you unsafe? What is the worst thing that can happen if you get mugged and you get killed? Then you'd be on the other side going, wow, wow, this is good stuff. So there's nothing to be afraid of. There's everything already is, and it is our experience of it that changes and expands our consciousness or our vibration to a different level. And just because we're in time and space, we're talking about it going up and out. Who had their hand up over here? Drew.
And I think about, it's not just this 3-dimension, it's all dimensions, every micro moment, rippling out of every different choice that we make and everything that we do. And then you have 4th dimension, then you have everything that's created.
And that's why it can show up so much better than if we try to control it by making it happen with the power of our thought. Because there's so much more going on that if we just go, everything's fine, God is still in charge of the universe, God is still all that there is, and as a spiritual being, there's only love and there's only light, and all is well, and however this works out, it's going to be perfect and wonderful, because it already is. Chill. And then it shows up. That is the spiritual chill. And then it shows up in greater ways than we could have imagined. I love that phrase, God has ways of giving us money that we've never even dreamed of yet. God has ways of bringing our good into our world that we've never even dreamed of yet. Totally dualistic languaging, I know. But I love the feeling that it gives me, that there are things in the works on a universal scale for my good and for your good that I don't have to worry about, I don't have to make happen. All I have to do is ride this wave and watch it show up. It's already done because it's already here.
Well,
who had their hand up?
And to go with that, when I visualize money coming to me, it was just pouring on me, like these 2 different directions. But it's not 2 different directions. It's all directions. It's going to a safe and have it already there. It's opening your wallet and just pouring it out, just going like an ATM.
Right.
Literally just everywhere.
And what we're going to talk about when we talk about money as a spiritual idea is not even having the image of it, but having the experience of everything being handled. Because people who have big money, they don't have money. They don't hold money. They don't have, credit cards and things like that. They live a life where everything is handled. And I think that's what we want to do, whether we have what some people would say is a lot of money or a little bit of money. The consciousness is that all is well, everything is handled, and then watch how that shows up. Jane, and then we're going to go to whoever. Deb, did you have your hand up? Deb, love? No? Okay. Jane.
Well, when I was a little kid, I had a kind of a chaotic home, and one time I ran out of my house into a neighbor's lawn, and it was kind of cloudy, I remember, but I stood there, and suddenly I just was in a whole other world, and all the fear and all this, all just disappeared, and I thought, and I wasn't conscious of, I didn't create it, I didn't even know it was in me.
That's the real world that you live in, Jane.
Yeah, well, I don't know what it was, but.
Go visit it more often.
Well, how do you do it?
Spiritual practice.
Spiritual practice.
Sit there
Yeah.
and go back to that point when you were a child, run into the neighbor's yard and stand there. Because that's a reality that's more real than all of this other stuff. That's a reality that I believe that we know. I think that that's where we go when we walk on fire.
Yeah.
We go somewhere. and walk across that fire. I've seen John's energy go across that fire and take someone and carry them into his arms. You go into a different sphere, different something. So there's so much more going on than meets the eye here. And what we want to do is open up to maybe even, you know, I don't want to get too wooey-wooey, but maybe even to a place that doesn't have words, that doesn't have the pictures, that just has the sense that all is well, I am connected. I love that song. I don't know who sang it, but somebody sang it recently in the last year or so. Nothing is ever lost and we are not forgotten. I'm living in the heart of God. You know, to have that sense that all is well. Nothing's lost, everything's here. I am not forgotten, I am deeply loved. I am living in the heart of God. And if we can shift into that, then the contract, the delivery, the traffic, the medical report, all of that stuff comes into alignment with its divine pattern that has always been there. Joe.
All this we were talking about, maybe, this is what Albert Einstein has a quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes. Everything is energy, and that's all there is. There's nothing to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality.
Einstein said that?
It cannot be, there cannot be no other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics.
Match the energy with the reality that you want. And that is the reality you will get. Put your belief system in front of the universe. And the universe, and what you'll get is the universe you believe is there. Thank you, Joe. That's good. Good stuff.
That was Einstein?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Tesla had a lot of that stuff. Both of them.
Tesla, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So this isn't new. We saw in the very first class, this goes back to 12,000 years ago to the Upanishads, and it's come up. But in modern times, you know, a lot of people are understanding this. A lot of people are saying that when you wake up in the morning, what day are you going to go into? When you decide what day you'll go into, that's the day that you go into. And some people get up in the morning and they say, you know, life is just out to get me and everything's going to go wrong, that awful Murphy's Law. And that's what they get. But that doesn't mean that that's what's true at the highest level of truth. That's what they chose to turn this amazing energy of spirit into, for whatever reason. But what we want to choose is to rise above that and say, when I open up the door in my soul to my day, I'm going to have it a day of light and love and joy and happiness and abundance and health and all of these wonderful things, and then that's what you go into. And that's what you get. And people start saying, wow, you're just so lucky. You're not lucky. This is what you have aligned yourself with, opened up to, transcended into. Yeah, that's what it's about. And my passion is for us not to use this teaching to just get stuff. I like to get stuff, and we do use it to get stuff, but that's lower level stuff. I mean, I marvel that we had one of our major leaders of this movement say once that Science of Mind will only get you to by me, of to me, by me, through me, as me. That's the most, she didn't understand the teaching. If you think that this is only about being able to create a parking space or to get more money or to, you know, empty out your closet so that someone else will move in and fill up the closet, that's all possible and that we can do that, but that's not the point. The point is to experience our oneness, our connection, our true nature. And when we do that, everything is great. And so the outer vibration of that in manifestation is that great things fill our lives, whatever that may be. But if we go into it thinking, this is what I want to create today, then we can do that, but we shrink in it. And I want us to stop shrinking in this teaching just so that we can be secure enough to have the car or the job or the money or the person, and to be able to trust enough to open up to have it all. That is what I want to do. And so, yes, we learn how to manifest things, and people leave the doctors all the time and call and say, please treat for this, that it, you know, I don't want to do cancer. I don't want to do this diagnosis. But sometimes doing that diagnosis is the best thing for our experience of who we are. So when we get down to micromanaging the creative power of the universe, inherent in the process is limitation. And what I want us to do is to be safe enough and trust enough to open up to it and say, whatever is coming my way is filled with good. It's a blessing, and I'm accepting it, and I'm joyous about it, and only good can come to me. This or something better. Karen.
So, in Dare to Claim Your Good, one of the statements that you write every day and say out loud 3 times is, I choose to live in trust. And that's become somewhat of a mantra for me in the past year. And I recently had some life changes. Someone moved out of my house and to their own space, and we worked really hard and maintaining and growing our connection to each other, even though we are not in the same house, and that's been a conscious choice. And then I was in fear of, how am I going to do all of this and pay for everything that I now have to pay for on my own? And I really got into this fearful spot. And then I just kept saying, it will be okay. I just choose to live in trust that it will be okay. And then I started thinking about, well, maybe I could do Airbnb, maybe I could rent out the downstairs of my house. And I started talking to a friend of mine who's a realtor about what her thoughts were on it. And I just started kind of putting it out there and getting information about what people thought. But again, where's the money gonna come from? How am I gonna make this happen? It's gotta be cleaned out, that's overwhelming. But I choose to live in trust. And then one day, several weeks ago, I just woke up and went, I can do this. Just suddenly it was like, there's no more fear. I can do this. This can work. And I just have been putting it out there that I'm doing it. And 3 days ago, my realtor friend called me and said, I have 2 girls who need a space for 2 weeks, and I thought about you and your space. And it was like, okay. And I hung up the phone, and then it's like, crap, it's not cleaned out, furniture's not out, the ramp for safety's not in, and, but the person who just moved out of my house spent all weekend helping me move stuff out, sell stuff. The guys the other day putting in a ramp, and it's amazing how when I just said, I just choose to live in trust and it will be okay, that it's rolling.
Right. I choose to live in trust, it will be okay. And even beyond, I can do this, it's already done. It's already done. It's already done. Everything is okay. I think if we could just relax.
Yeah, I am a little bit panicked at this moment. But I think about that this weekend is coming and these people are gonna be there, and my cats are gonna be upset because these people are bringing 2 cats. But then I go, it will all be okay.
It is okay.
It is okay.
It is okay. And it's already done. You know, I've often thought about my past and the me that I used to be and the me that I am today, and how ridiculous the me that I am today is to the me that I used to be. And then I think about the future me. And I have this idea of the me in the future being able to reach back to me in my present moment and just reach out a hand and say, it's all done. Oh, it worked out amazing, it's wonderful, come on. And I, in my mind's eye, reach out to that child that had no future and reach out and say, no, it's all amazing. You get to live an amazing life, and it's all okay. Not only is it okay, it's really great. Take my hand, it's okay. And so I think that inside of us, we have the ability to open up to that presence of spirit that is saying, oh, no, 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 no. You get to have an amazing life. And it's all done. It's already happened. It's all done. Everything is great. And that if we can open up to that, that it makes things so much easier. Again, if we could all just relax a little bit and move forward in our lives with trust that the universe really is in balance and harmony and everything is working out just the way that it needs to for the continued balance and harmony, health, wholeness, love, and joy of everybody, then that would just make it so much easier to be able to go there. Instead of, oh my God, there's a piece of furniture in here, what am I gonna do? The whole universe has already evolved to where I get to live a wonderful life, and it's already done. And so being able to relax into that lets me transcend, lets me vibrate, lets me shift my consciousness to where in ease and grace, not that you don't have to clean out the basement, but that opens and allows the energy to come through. Let's take a break. Can we roll it? So let's talk about money. Money as a spiritual idea. Now I can go with money as an idea because money is often either paper bills, which even now are fading away, to paper checks, to electronic cards, to just wire transfers through the air that nobody ever really sees. So I can understand that money is a symbol and it's an idea, but how is money a spiritual idea?
Everything is spiritual.
Because everything is spiritual, but in particular, how is money a spiritual idea?
Because it has to do with what he says, perfect supply.
Because it has to do with perfect supply. Thank you. Sandy?
Well, one of the things that John taught me is that you're not going for the feeling of the money in your hand. You're going for the feeling that it gives you. So prosperity is not just money, it's the feeling of being prosperous.
So the spiritual idea of money is the feeling of being prosperous.
Yes.
Okay. Are you sure that was John?
You know, the two of you run together sometimes, so I don't know. From different angles.
Deb?
It's also an exchange of love.
Exchange of love. What else? How is money a spiritual idea?
It's a tool. It's a tool that we use in just about every aspect of our lives.
For what?
To buy things, to buy food.
So how is that a spiritual idea? That's it as an idea, but how is it a spiritual idea?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Jennifer, Rick, Becca, and then we're gonna close it down.
For me, it links to safety and freedom.
Safety and freedom. Who else did I say? Rick.
Yeah, I was thinking of the freedom thing, but you know, it's that I can be, do, or have anything I want to do, you know.
So that would be freedom?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And who was the last one? Becca?
The symbol of our self-worth.
I'll just put down worth. So Ernest wrote these two papers back in the 1917, I think it was 1917, that he wrote these papers for a magazine on money being a spiritual idea. And what he's describing, he didn't talk about money at all in the first one, but he talks about, again, a state of consciousness, an idea that there is within us that worth. that presence of the divine. And that presence of the divine is inside of us in a big way. It's not in a limited way. And he's looking at opening us up to this idea that we live in an abundant universe and that all is well. He talks about, he read a little Wallace Waddles, so he's dispelling myths about money by saying that being rich is not contingent upon where you are, because if it was contingent on where you live, then everybody where you live would be rich. Being rich is not contingent upon the type of business that you're in, because there are people in that business that are rich and people who are not rich in that same business. Being rich, and he just goes down the line, which is all out of The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Waddles. Being rich doesn't depend on your age or your sex or your education. There are people that live in different spots, are in the same or different businesses, that have different education levels and different ages and different sexes, different genders, and they all get rich. It doesn't have anything to do, what he's saying, is with the outside. He's saying that being rich has to do with consciousness. The consciousness that you hold and how you see the world is what determines whether or not you have money in your life. And since the article is on money as a spiritual idea, Wallace Waddles is talking about being rich, we want to build a bridge between the two of those. What Wallace Waddles is saying is that when you live your life going from the competitive universe to the creative universe, and when you live your life in such a way that you lift those around you up instead of knocking them down, then you experience richness. What Ernest is saying is that what we want to do is we want to go to what the idea is behind money, and we want to align with that, and the only thing that money gives us is a link to that state of consciousness. So again, looking at primary and secondary causation, we don't want to go after the money to feel safe. We want to be safe. If I said that you could give me a certain amount of money and that, or if I said I could give you a certain amount of money and that would guarantee you never had to be afraid again in your life, that would be great, but it doesn't work that way. What happens is that we have the consciousness that we have, the money shows up in our lives, and then we experience that money through our belief about what life is, and the money becomes that to us. So if you have a consciousness of lack and limitation, and you win the lottery, you don't keep the money. That's why you don't keep the money when you win the lottery, because you haven't changed the consciousness. If you have a consciousness that there's more than enough, and you win the lottery, you keep the money. There was an interview with some people in Tennessee or Kentucky or something that had won hundreds of millions of dollars. And they were interviewed and asked, well, what are you going to do? And the guy said, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get that new rototiller for the garden. That was wealth to him.
Yeah, sure.
So somebody who has not enough, no matter how much they get, it's never going to be enough. So we don't want to look at the actual money, because even though it's a tool to what we get in life, it's not the spiritual consciousness that we want to go to. What we want to do is we want to live our lives in such a way that we are wealthy. Whether we have $1 or $1 billion, that we are wealthy. And as we experience life in that level of wealth, money shows up, and maybe it doesn't show up the way that you thought it would. Maybe if you thought that your worth was contingent upon the amount of money that you had, and that your worth was never good enough, then how are you ever going to get that huge idealized amount that you have that's going to make you worthy? Well, as soon as I hit the $1 million before I'm 30, then I'll be worthy, I'll be okay. Well, that's never going to happen, because the $1 million can't come while you don't feel worthy. On the other hand, if you feel that you have great worth, and that you are living life, exchanging love, safe, freedom, a feeling of being prosperous, knowing that there's always a perfect supply, then money will show up in your life. But the money doesn't give you those things. You bring those things to the money. And if you've already got those, then it doesn't really matter whether you've got enough to pay your rent and you've got $1 left over, or whether you've got tens of millions of dollars in the bank. People who say, oh, I want to have millions of dollars, I'm always suspect of that. Because what do you think that's going to do? How do you think that's going to change things? It won't. The only thing that will change things is in here. And so he's looking at this idea of supply. That we live in an infinite universe and there is infinite supply. So you can never not have enough. There's always more than enough. And again, we're talking about moving in levels of consciousness from using the science of mind to demonstrate things, which we do. We do it every summer with our annual prosperity. All right, are you ready? You know, and we're here, and up on your feet, and we do the treatment, and people come in, and they have these amazing things happen. That's great, but what this class is about is shifting our consciousness into a bigger idea of who we are. And what will a bigger idea in consciousness give you?
Yes.
Give you yes?
Yes.
Okay, what else? Okay, give me something I can understand.
It will give you anything, everything,
It'll give you anything, everything, whatever. If a more inside will give you more outside, but you won't look at the outside more as a way to get more inside. Because you've already got the more inside, which is why you got the more outside. When you don't have more inside, you don't have enough outside. Susan.
Knowing that I am wealthy.
Yes.
Have the consciousness of wealth.
Margot and then David.
Could you talk a little bit about how money is an exchange of love? I'm not grasping what that means.
It's an exchange of energy, and all energy is love, and it came from the Love Gals.
Come
on, Margot, just think about it. Come
I read a post, I think it was today, from a good friend of a lot of us, Joe Neely, who's no longer here physically, but he said...
He's not dead, he's in Florida.
He's crossed over the Florida line.
No, he did not say that.
But he posted that he's really feeling prosperous and abundant in just the right amount. In other words, he has the abundance that he's hoping for, but in an amount that he can process and stay within his comfort zone.
Because he's on a bike.
Right.
So he's not getting a TV.
But I like the idea that it's like, all right, I want prosperity, but I don't want, like $100 million lottery, then I gotta process a whole new way of living,
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not.
You'll adjust.
I could deal with it.
Okay. Natural gifts entail obligations to the giver. Think about that. Now this is in dualistic language. This is Ernest in 1917, but listen to the spirit of this. Natural gifts entail an obligation to the giver. We discharge the debt by using what we have been given. So if you have a gift, it doesn't come free and clear. And the only way that you can pay for it is to give it. If I didn't teach and I have a natural gift for this, if I didn't do this, it would drive me crazy. And I would have a big debt. I would go through this life and I wouldn't have done what I was supposed to do. If you have a gift, you are supposed to use it. And you are supposed to give it out into humanity. If you are a writer, you are supposed to write. If you are an artist, you're supposed to do your art. If you're a singer or a musician, you are supposed to give your music. Whatever it is that is your gift, the way that you find peace within yourself is to give it. And now, as money as a spiritual idea, why in the world does he start off with this? That we all have this debt to pay for the gifts that we have been given, the inherent natural gifts that we have. It's because we do not demonstrate prosperity and abundance if we are carrying around debt. And he's saying that we can carry around debt to life because we are not giving our gift. Well, I'm not gonna paint the picture until someone will pay me $50,000 for it. Then you will go crazy. You have to paint. You have to sing. You have to dance. You have to build things. Whatever your gift is, you have to do it to be in balance. And energetically, what does that do for you? If you're giving out into life, and you have already received this wonderful thing, whatever it is, you're a gardener, whatever it is, and you're giving that out into life, what is happening energetically in you?
You're open to receive.
You're in the flow.
You're giving. You're allowing it to come back.
You're opening up, you're allowing it to come back. Wonderful. Okay, Sandy and then Betty.
When you actually read that, instead of the word debt, in my mind, I heard responsibility.
Yeah, this is Ernest Holmes.
Yeah.
That's why I said listen to the spirit of it. But don't you feel that? You've been given a gift. You have a gift to sing. You have to sing.
It's a responsibility.
You went and sang to Dorothy as she was transitioning. Didn't you? Who sang? Didn't somebody come sing to your mom other than the hospice person? Never mind. In my mind, you went and sang.
She sang at the memorial service.
Right. So when you give your gift, then you are evening yourself up. When you're evened up in life, the only thing that life can do is give itself to you. But as long as you're going, no, I'm not going to give, then life can't give to you.
Right.
Betty.
I was just gonna say that, coin my own phrase for that, if you're not giving your gift, you're spiritually constipated.
Right, you're spiritually constipated.
Francis.
Excuse me.
Page 265.
Ernie was a wild guy.
So one of the things that I want to talk about with money as a spiritual idea is the way that we stay in the flow of prosperity. And any of you who have been in my classes, you know I am a big advocate of tithing. And I know that a lot of people in this room and in this center tithe 10% of their money to where they are spiritually fed. But I want to have a conversation about why you're doing that, where you're coming from, in this idea that we're moving from, I'm going to make this happen, I'm going to use the power of mind, I'm going to do this formula, and then I'm going to get this demonstration, to an expanded, greater, transcendent consciousness of the perfect supply, feeling of being prosperous, exchange of love, safety and freedom, and worth. So when I learned how to tithe, I had 37 cents to my name and a 3-year-old and was living in Eugene, Oregon. I had no place to live, no vehicle, no job, no nothing. And my spiritual teacher told me, if you think you cannot afford to tithe, you cannot afford not to tithe. I was very fear motivated at that point, because that was a fear-based teaching. Something that I try not to use on you to manipulate you. But what he was saying was that your own belief that says I can't afford it is what's keeping you from being able to have more. And so the only way to blast through that is to go ahead and tithe, see that you're not going to be swallowed up by the world, watch things of greater and greater value show up in your life, and have your life start to grow and expand. So I was on board. Opened up my wallet, dumped 37 cents in the basket, didn't have a penny to my name at that point, and I stepped out on faith. There are a lot of people that are my students and that I teach who tithe because they want to get. They want to get that tenfold return. They know that if they write out a check, as soon as they get some money in for 10%, that's going to set the universe in motion, and they're going to get 10 times that back, and everything's going to be okay. And so there is a using the law of mind to make something happen. And one of the things that I like about that is that if you have any kind of fear at all about that you're abundantly supplied in the universe, and that you're living in faith, and that all is well, and that only good and greater good shows up, if you have any fear that that's not happening at all, tithing brings the fear up. Especially if you're saying, I don't have enough money to begin with. That's crazy. You're going to starve me out. This is taking the very food out of my mouth you're asking me to do. And what I'm asking you to do is to take that fear, bring it up in full force in life, set spiritual law in motion, and watch how the fear disappears. That's why when people start to tithe and they watch these things happen in their life, they're sold. They are absolutely sold. They know that if they tithe on that income, that they will get back more than they ever gave away. And that creates an ever-expanding flow of money in their life. I don't want you to stay there. What I want us to do is to tithe from that sense of fullness, that sense of trust, that even if it didn't come back, which it will, but even if it didn't come back, that's not why we're tithing. We're not singing our song only if we're paid for the gig. We're singing our song because it's our gift to the world. We're giving our financial gift out of our fullness, trust, and assurance that we live in an abundant universe where there is more than enough for all. So that we're not looking for the end result of what we're setting law in motion about. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I feel like we're on a cusp here, a precipice, a shift, that it's so easy to use science of mind to manifest the stuff that we want in life. Who in their right mind wouldn't do that? And so we do that, and we spend a year or 2 or 3 manifesting the stuff that we want in life, getting to where we feel safer in the world, where we know that we're always going to have enough because we can manifest what we need. So we get afraid and we manifest, and we get afraid and we demonstrate, we get afraid and we treat, we get afraid and we see a practitioner and we fix it. What I want us to do is go from the realm of the fear and the fixing consciousness and realize that we have been given a gift. In this instance, it is that we live in an abundant universe where there is more than enough for us, and that we give out of that fullness into life, not to then set the law in motion and get back, but to give our gift because that's what we do, because that keeps the energy flowing, and we've already been given the gift. So it doesn't really matter what comes back. We're not doing it for that motivation because we are already filled full to overflowing. We are giving to allow ourselves to be in that flow of life, the same way that we exhale and then we inhale, so that we can keep that going. I know people who are adamant tithers, but they tithe specifically to get that money back. And that's a wonderful step, to go from I don't have enough to I'm going to try this out, I'm going to face my fears, and oh my God, great stuff is happening, this is fantastic, to I always have more than enough. I have enough to be generous, I have enough to tithe, I have enough to give, and I always have more than enough, which in creation means that our lives keep demonstrating more and more and more, to where we then become the philanthropists, the entrepreneurs, those people that just have so much because they give so much. And as much as we would like to say, and that counts to X number, it doesn't have any relationship to the dollars. It's all about the spiritual idea of the money and the giving. And I know that there are people in this room that practice what I call the spiritual art of tithing. And I want us just to check ourselves out. Are we tithing to get? Because we know that if we stand in front of that slot machine and we put $1 in, we get 10 back. Who in the world would leave that slot machine? Except then you're tethered to a slot machine the rest of your life and you don't get to live your life. Or do we trust that we have so much that we can afford to give it? And that no matter how it looks, if it's to someone on the side of the road and it's our last 20 in our pocket and we want to give it, we just go ahead and give it. Because we know and trust and live this idea of spiritual abundance. And then that always shows up in the outer as some form of demonstration, which for most of us would be some kind of money. But when we look at the money in our lives, or the money that we're creating, look at me, I'm creating all this money, and we place our value and worth in alignment with how much we have closed down our flow. When John, I was tagging along, when John worked in public housing all over the country, when he worked for Robert Schuller, and he was, no, that wasn't it, when he worked for End World Hunger, and they were funding building vegetable gardens in low-income housing developments all around the country, and he would go in and he would build the gardens, and they'd get them all planted, and would not let them put a fence around it. No, you cannot fence your neighbors out, because that's fear. And he would organize them all to talk to each other and to develop spokespersons for the electric company to come in and fix the lighting and things like that, so that they were finding their power. I was exposed to people who had no money. You know, women who were raising 4 grandchildren. They had no money, and yet they were so prosperous, and they were so wealthy. They would put part of their garden off in flowers. When they could get 9 collard plants out of a square foot, they would plant flowers. Their kids were hungry, but they would take some of their produce over to a neighbor that was too old or not able to grow a garden. Pure trust, pure faith. So you cannot count it by the money that you have. You have to count it by the way that you feel in life. And there's a part in the book somewhere that says, money cannot buy this. But I know that that kind of consciousness, that kind of way of looking at life, will give you the life that you think money will buy. So is this making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to live every moment of my life knowing that there's always more than enough. I tithe because that's my practice. Over the years, I've tithed for the joy of the gift instead of the expectation of what I'm going to get back. I've had more money, and I have felt better in my life, in my own skin, in my world. Because even if that didn't work, you know, even if it wasn't my little catch way of getting money in the world, if it just went out and I never saw it again, that would be fine. And it's not the way the universe works, but that would be fine. To give out of the fullness of my experience can only create a fuller experience. But in the moment, I'm not feeling like I'm working with the universe and the universe is a used car salesman, or I'm a used car salesman trying to work a deal with the divine. That limits our experience of life. So I want to encourage you, if you don't tithe, start, because it will bring things up that need to be brought up, And it will show you how demonstrations, miracles, manifestations come from all over, and you will have such breakthroughs and energy and trust and faith. But then I want you to move past that to giving just because you have so much to give. And you can't count that in dollars. To me, that's the spirituality behind money, is the way that it touches our lives as it comes in, and the way that it touches our world as it goes out. And for me, it's all tracked back to that quote, that we are all given a gift. And the way that we can not be out of balance, let me put it that way, is that we have to give the gift. It has nothing to do with whether we're playing a trombone on a street corner or whether we're at the Met. Is that it? Yeah, the Met. Sorry, I'm moonstruck recently. It was the Met. And so when we can give that gift, and it translates to money because it's a chapter on money, when we can give that gift in our money with that same energy and consciousness of the fullness that we give our inherent natural gift out into the world, then I think that we have connected with this amazingly big thing that manifests as prosperity and abundance, and that we have developed a huge sense of trust and faith, which keeps us safe and manifests freedom, which is what we thought we were going to get from the money. Margaret.
I just realized I've been tithing as a preventative measure. Instead
It's
of
your
from
insurance policy.
Instead of from a fullness,
Uh-huh.
I've been tithing as a, I have to do this, or who knows what's gonna happen.
Right, or something bad will happen if I don't do,
I'll
talk
be
about
behind the
superstition.
stone. Yeah, thank you for that.
You tithe because you have so much,
Yes.
so
From the
much.
fullness.
And it doesn't have to be limited to 10.
Mhm.
They say that's just the starting point. J.C. Penney was giving away 90% of his income when he died. 90%. The guy who created Caterpillar, the tractor, gave away 90% of his money. 90%. So think about how it is you are in that faith that I live in an abundant universe where there is more than enough for all. Linda.
I believe it was Caterpillar that when the original founder died and they started not giving, the business started going down.
Right? Because why do you not give? You
Fair.
don't give because you think there's not enough. Sue.
I was just thinking that the giving, when you talk about like the balance of the giving and the getting back, the giving for me is the greatest when
That is the getting back.
It is the getting back.
Yes.
Just in the giving, there's a fulfillment that the whole cycle is complete, just in that moment.
Right. Right. Thank you. Mary.
For now, about when I tithe, I definitely think of that part where I'm spiritually fed. And it comes out of gratitude, so much gratitude, because I really look to see where am I being spiritually fed. And for right now, and it's so obvious because what I'm learning here and just the way that I operate, live my life through these teachings is so different than the average person right now. That's out, and we had brunch with some other people that are not part of this teaching, and they're very spiritual, but they're not. They're fearful right now. And I am not afraid, and so most certainly I want to tithe out of deep gratitude of where I'm being spiritually fed.
Right, and then in that moment, you receive your gift.
Right.
And in that expanded consciousness, you can only create a bigger life, whatever that is. A trip around the world, or money. It doesn't have to be money. It can be any kind of thing. Thank you. Somebody had their hand up over here. Okay, Susan and then Judith.
There's a poem, I used to hear Eric Butterworth say it all the time, and I had to look it up because I forgot some of it, but if thou of fortune be bereft, and in thy store there be but left 2 loaves, sell one, and with the dole buy white hyacinths to feed your soul. So if the spirit is down and you feel all is lost and you only have 2 loaves, as he's speaking of, very little, sell one, and with the trust and with the joy, just buy white hyacinths, which is symbolic of the soul. I used to, as a mantra, say that over and over and over, and it's so good to have it come back up to me. I love that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, isn't it a beautiful image?
It is, it is. Because if you hold on to those 2 loaves of bread, as that's the last bread you're ever gonna get, you're gonna create that that's the last bread you're ever gonna get. Hold on for 1 second. I have a friend that, when she was going through ministerial school, she was raising her 3 children by herself, and she said whenever money would get really tight, they would have steak. Yeah, they would have steak. It's a way to say, you're not gonna hook me. Judith.
About last May, I sold a camera of mine to a friend of mine in California. And he asked if he could pay me half then, and then he would send me the other half. Well, I still haven't received the other half. And I just realized, sitting here listening to you, that I've been so caught up in, he owes me this money, he owes me this money. And I've been saying every night when Breezy and I do our thing, all my debts due to me have been paid and cleared. And I pigeonholed myself. And I think now I could just let it go. And it's a gift.
I'm a big proponent of
it's
letting
his.
it go.
It's his.
Yes.
I don't need it.
And no one can keep what is yours.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, it's not yours, so just let it go.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome. Deb, and then Sandy.
There have been times when business was slow for us, and so we went on vacation. And while we were on vacation, we got all these phone calls, business. And
Right.
so it works.
It does.
Always.
Hallelujah.
More vacation.
Are you gonna do to go somewhere?
Yeah,
you are, yeah.
I may be backing into this from a different angle, but if you ever notice on the Sundays that I sing, I don't tithe for people to see me doing it.
Huh?
It's just very personal to me.
And there are a lot of people here who do that.
Mhm.
That's why I take the time to thank the people who give without putting money in the baskets. Because, gosh, we probably get half of the money here, not in the Sunday baskets.
Because I don't want to go, look, I'm putting it in the basket. That's just not who I am.
And some people, they're very comfortable with that. But people give in all different kinds of ways, and it is personal to them. And I like what you said about thinking about where you're spiritually fed. Be mindful that, pardon me, Karen?
On Dare to Claim Your Good, I tithe where I am spiritually fed is actually one of the statements from Edwina. I think she's the one that did the Dare to Claim Your Good sheet.
Maybe,
Edwin
Gaines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's on there is
Right.
that I tithe where I'm fed spiritually, and
Right.
that you write it down every day, say it out loud 3 times a day.
And I would hope that you are fed spiritually here, but I am not naive enough to think this is the only place you're fed spiritually. You know, you may be going to an event or something like that, and as much as I would like to corral all the potential tithe money and only have it go here, that comes from fear and limitation. We live in an abundant universe where there is more than enough for all. be mindful that you're not tithing as a way of saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, I'm gonna use this to give this to you, and then you'll, whatever, as a manipulative thing. So that's why perhaps not even being noticed is a good idea. But just check yourself out. Why do you give? How do you give? And in my opinion, when we give from this transcendent state, where we are clear as a bell that everything that we've ever wanted is already here, and that we have more than enough, and that we give with love, then it changes everything. So practice that in your giving. What was that, Khalil Gibran? If you cannot give with love in your heart, it's better that you sit outside the gates of the temples and beg alms from those who do.
Just big either way.
For those who bake a bread of indifference, bake a bitter bread. Yeah.
Wow.
So, wonderful, good class, good conversation. I'm very impressed. Take out what you're going to give. Those of you watching online, you too can participate in this giving process by going to the Donate Now button on the website. It'll take you right to our PayPal account. So, everybody take a deep breath. So what I know is that we are abundant, beautiful beings of light and love. That we live in a universe that is constantly expanding and growing. That we always have more than enough. That life delights in its support of us. And so I know that our gift this day is from our fullness, our overflowing of all good things. And it carries with it that energy of always having more than enough, of always being safe, of being totally, absolutely free. We give out of our joy this night. And in that, we know that we come together to make this Center for Spiritual Living Asheville an amazing place for people to come, where it is a place of peace, a beacon of light, a tower of strength, and a fountain of wisdom that touches the lives of all who call it home. And so it is. Breathe it in, breathe it in. We are all having an amazing life, and it continues to get better and better and better. We cannot outgive the universe. Every time we exhale, we inhale, and we exhale. And so we give our gift tonight knowing that it's multiplied and returned. We give our gift out of a sense of fullness, and that each and every one of us is so blessed to be able to call this center home. That each and every one of us, whether we are here physically or whether we are watching online, we get to learn ideas that open us up to our true self. We get to see the world with God eyes. We get to live in absolute love. So I know that everything in these baskets is blessed. And that when we give, that which we are goes with our gift. I see it as golden light pouring forth from each and every one of us, filling up this room from the floor to the ceiling and all between the walls. This air is rich and blessed with God as us. That energy in our lives touches us, it blesses us, it heals us. It goes on out around this world to touch and bless and heal every being on this planet, and then shoots out into the stars to continue to do its holy work, always taking a little piece of us with it, always here and always now, touching every one of us here tonight, everyone who's ever been here, and everyone yet to come. And so it is. I love you. Excellent class. Thank you.